A couple of News Nation political contributors into the conversation on all of this with Denise Gitsham, former Republican congressional candidate in California, and Democratic strategist Chris Hahn. Take Pennsylvania first, Chris. I'm going to try to run through a few states. You know, I talked about Pittsburgh because we talk about Philly all the time, but making the larger point of the margins around these cities. And I know the Democrats think they're getting late deciders. How do you see Pennsylvania?
I see Pennsylvania going to Harris by 4 points on election night. Looking at the early voting data and how far behind Trump is, Maris actually put a poll out of early voters in Pennsylvania, and it is very clear from that polling data that there are Republicans that voted early that voted for Harris. And if the trend continues, I don't expect it to continue at the level it is right now, but if it continues through Election Day, she wins by 4 points. And look, Pittsburgh's a great city. They put French fries on their sandwiches. I think that's a great contribution to America. And I think they're going to have a big say on election night. But it's not just the cities and the ring counties. I mean, you're talking about margins. Harris has been doing a pretty good job at working at suburban, exurban, and rural counties and trying to bring Trump's margin of victory down there, too. I think it's been a good strategy. I think she's been appealing to women in those areas. She's got a very good commercial out right now, narrated by Julia Roberts, aimed at women in those counties.
Right.
I think it's going to be an interesting election night, but I think we'll call it by 2 a.m.
Well, the way that would happen, I think, well, there's a couple of ways. But if North Carolina and Georgia went one way early, because we'll probably have a lot of data from them, and then you add in Pennsylvania, the winner, if they take all three, you could have an early call.
North Carolina is going for Harris, and it's going early. Georgia, we might not know until late. But Denise, North Carolina will know by 11 o'clock.
I know Denise doesn't agree with all of that, maybe some of it, but so take it from there. You know, it was interesting, you talking about trying to cut into margins, and I think Chris is right about the strategy of all of this. Then Trump right now, we just showed him, he goes out to Wayne County, Dearborn, Michigan, and he's trying to take advantage, seems like, of a weakness, what he perceives as a weakness for Harris with Arab American voters. And I wonder if that works.
Yeah, well, you won't be surprised that I haven't seen the polls that Chris has, but he's so close to all of the folks in the Democratic Party that I'm sure he's seeing some internal polling. I'll just tell you, in 2000, our party, Republicans, had President George W. Bush up by 5 percentage points in Pennsylvania in 2000 election night, and we lost by a ton. So don't buy into the internal polls, my friend. That said, the whole Dearborn strategy, and really, I've seen it on both sides. It's so fascinating what both candidates are doing right now to go after really territory they've never been in before. You know, what's interesting about Michigan is that Arab Americans, when I worked in the 2000 Bush campaign, Arab Americans were strongly behind George W. Bush because they're conservative, they're faith-based people, and so they were naturally conservative. And I think that what Trump is trying to do is go after that and really reclaim what we lost after 9/11. And I think it's effective if he speaks to the issues that matter to them.
Okay, now let me get to this other point. Chris brought it up. I want to hear what both of you think about it. It was just kind of, it's related to North Carolina, because we had an interesting conversation, or really two conversations on our show yesterday about timing. Scott Tranter, who's our data guy at Decision Desk HQ, mentioned that scenario that I talked about how it could be called early. But also Sean Spicer on, of course, used to be Trump's press secretary. He's confident about Trump, but it was interesting about what the place he said he was worried. Tranter first, then Spicer. Watch.
Well, we're thinking about North Carolina and Georgia. As long as there's one candidate, 2 or 3 points up, maybe a little bit more. I don't want to promise anything. We should be able to know those before midnight.
I think he takes the whole blue wall, but I won't be blown away. In fact, I'm more nervous about North Carolina than I am the blue wall.
Okay, I'm going to have Denise start this one off, and then, Chris, I know you're going to have plenty to say about it as well. Thoughts about what we should be watching early and how it might go early?
Yeah, specific to North Carolina, you know, I just read an article yesterday that said that Democrats are concerned that in Mecklenburg County, where Charlotte is, they aren't seeing the turnout that they expect to, certainly not 08 levels, as they like to talk about when we talked about Democratic sweeps. And so, you know, I feel like North Carolina is one of those states, kind of like Arizona and Georgia, where I just feel like in the base of who they are, they lean conservative, even if they register Democrat. And I think that's why Harris's ultra-progressive record and what she's done to the economy, you know, she's a lot of historic things, right, in terms of who she is. But what she's probably known best for is historic interest rates, historic inflation, and a lot of other bad historic things. And I think that hasn't left the memories of any voters, much less those in North Carolina.
Okay. Of the 7, you know, toss-up states, Chris, the best pre-election data for Trump has been in North Carolina, but you think Harris wins there. Why?
Well, look, his best data, he's been up 1 point, but pretty consistently up 1 point. Here is the problem. 1 point is not really a lead. You need a great field organization. When you got a guy like Mark Robinson heading the Republican Party in North Carolina, I don't think it drags down the top of the ticket, but what it does do is it destroyed your field organization when his entire campaign quit about a month ago. I don't know what happened to that field organization. I know that there's a young, energetic Democratic Party chair in North Carolina that's been working very hard, particularly in the field. And I've been looking at the early voting data there, too. It is an unprecedented gender gap happening in North Carolina.
Right.
Women are outnumbering men by 12% of people who have voted early in that state to date. And Harris is getting 56% of them in most polls of North Carolina. So I would suggest that North Carolina is not only in play, I would put it in Harris's column, and it is the basis of my prediction of an early election night call for Harris.
Sorry to jump on you.
Spicer's completely wrong about the blue wall, and he knows it. He's spinning
I
for
heard
his
you.
boy.
You'll have time to talk about that. I got to jump on you as I might go back to Donald Trump here, but I also got to go on and talk about the jobs report. Is he still talking about the Liz Cheney situation? All right, he was talking about the Liz Cheney situation, which we already talked about a few minutes ago, and he's trying to, say that he was just saying she was a war hawk. He didn't want anybody, shooting at her and all that kind of thing. He put something out on Truth Social, so he was just answering a question about that. We'll bring that to you in a moment. I said I wanted to go on and talk about the jobs report, which I do. Thank you, Chris, by the way. Thank you, Denise. October jobs